guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cheryl if you're new here, and today I'm here to talk to you about my 2018 bookish resolutions and then reflect on my 2017 bookish / channel resolutions. So without further ado, let's just get into what my goals and resolutions were for 2017 in terms of my channel and books. My 2017 bookish goals. The first one was to read 60 books. I did not complete this. I read 55, so I was 5 short, but you know, I'm okay with that because I actually read 4 or 5 more books than I did the previous year. So then I read in 2016, so I beat 2016's goal, so you know, I'm not going to beat myself up over that number, so. Alright, and I wanted to read my TBR down to 30 books. Okay, so a little context if you're one of the new viewers. I've got quite a few subscribers in the last couple months or so, and so you might not have seen my 2017 goals video. I had at the start of that video about 120 books on my TBR, and in my mind I was going to read that down to 30 books or get rid of and unhaul it down to 30 books. I did not do that. However, I did do a lot of unhauls recently, or on my channel throughout the year as a whole, which if you have been subscribed to me a while, you might have seen them. I'll leave my unhaul playlist below if you are interested in it. And so in my 2018 bookish goals, I'll talk about how many books I have left on my TBR, which is not as bad as I fear. It's not 30, but it's definitely not 120. So yeah, it's a little bit better. Not a whole lot, but a little bit better. So that goal didn't happen. I wanted to stop feeling guilty for DNFing books, and I feel like I definitely have. I've DNF'd a lot of books this year. Basically, if I'm not interested in the book within the first 30 pages, you know, depending on how long it is, or at least the first 10% of the book, then there's a good chance I'm not going to like the rest of the book, and I'll just put it down because life's too short to read shitty books. Unless, of course, I'm reading it because I realized how bad it is and I want to review it. The next goal that I had in 2017 was to basically narrow my bookshelves down to only the books that make me happy, so get rid of all the extra fluff books that I read, that I hated, that I kept for some reason, and I really kind of feel like I've done that once again. I've unhauled a lot of books recently, and so a lot of those books were not necessarily TBR books, but were books that I kept for some fucking reason, even though they didn't mean anything to me, even though I hated them when I read them, and I wasn't keeping them for video purposes. I just kept them because, and so I definitely got rid of a lot of those books, which is good because I'm going to be moving this year, and if you've ever moved with a lot of books, you know the struggle. So I wanted to kind of narrow that down so I didn't have to move with quite as many books. The next goal just 100% didn't happen, and that was keep up with the TBR jar. This is something I keep putting on my goals list, and I maybe will follow it for the first couple months of the year, and then just I stop following it. And the problem is I'm very, very much a mood reader, and so TBR jars just don't really work for me, because if you are unaware, the concept of a TBR jar is you put all the names of your own read books in a vessel, a jar, a cup, whatever, and you draw a name from that book, or from that jar, and you read that book. Well, I don't read enough books in a month to give myself a lot of leeway with that. Some people I follow do a TBR jar where they draw 1 or 2 names, but they also read 10 books. So if they're not feeling that book, they can just save it until later in the month. But the problem is I only read some months 2 or 3 books, and if I only read 2 books that month, that TBR jar book is literally one of my only options. So I just find they don't really work very well for me as a mood reader, and so I don't stick with them. So yeah, that didn't happen. I still have it on my shelf too. It's so out of date because another problem is I never would keep up with adding new books to it, as I would inevitably obtain or buy new books, so it's always a hot mess. And the last one is one that I feel successful in, and that is I wanted to stop feeling pressured to read super hype titles. So if you've been on BookTube a while, you know the titles I'm talking about, the books that are really fucking popular. And they could be popular for a good reason, such as The Hate U Give, which I have not read yet. Everyone raves highly of it. And I know I'm going to enjoy it when I read it. That's not the reason I haven't read it yet. I just don't own a copy of it, and I haven't gone to the library to pick one up. I want to read books that I want to read on my channel, and then books that, like, maybe no one else is reading or definitely not popular. For example, I read the first book in the Dragonlance Chronicles. This one is the second one, Dragons of Winter Night. This is a book series from the 80s based on like a D&D campaign. It is considered one of the D&D lores. There are different ones you can follow. But like, not anyone is talking about this on BookTube. And I don't want to feel guilty for reading this, even though I want to read it and want to enjoy it, because maybe it won't get me views. And like, that's a really toxic way to think about BookTube. And I don't make videos explicitly for the views. I make it so that we can have a discussion and people can comment and we can talk about things. And so that's one of the reasons that I was like, hey, you know what, fuck it. If I read popular books, I read them. If I don't, then I don't. I'm gonna read what I want to read. And I've kind of stuck to that this year. And as a result, I feel like my channel is more me. It's not me forcing myself to read books I don't want to read because they're popular on BookTube and it's what other people want to talk about. I'm reading books that I want to read. I'm reading things that I want to, and so I'm enjoying what I'm reading more. And if people haven't heard of the book, well, so be it. Maybe it's an opportunity for them to find a new book they want to read. That is long-winded and rambly, but you get my point. Basically, I wanted to make it a goal to stop feeling pressured to read certain books in order to fit in on BookTube, and I feel like I have done that. I've read a mix of hype titles, like I have read some very popular books, like The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, but I've also read some unpopular books, like books I've not heard anyone else talk about, like the Dragonlance Chronicles, or the Wordstone Chronicles, which is one of my favorite series, but I'd never hear anyone really on BookTube talk about it. And that hasn't stopped me from reading almost all the books by this point. Alright, so those were all my 2017 goals, and that's kind of how I did on them. They weren't the biggest success, but I set some lofty goals. Like, my dumbass decided I was only going to have 30 TBR books, which is still, like, a lot of books. I know there's some people who have, like, 5 physical TBR books, and I applaud you. If I could ever get down to that point, man, I just buy books too frequently. Alright, so my 2018, like, bookish goals. Alright, so I mentioned that I was going to tell you my current TBR now. I started at, like, it was between 104 and 120 books last year, depending on if I counted multiples in a series. Sometimes I would only count the first book in the series if I haven't read it, so as opposed to I own most of the Dune books, but I haven't read the first one, so I would only count the first one, and sometimes I counted multiples in a series, depending. So I had over 100 books on my TBR. I am currently down to 56 physical books on my TBR, and I unhauled, so that means I unhauled/read 48 books last year, and I think that's a pretty damn good number. Most of those I think became unhauled. I am proud of that number. I mean, 56 is still a lot of books. It's still not 30, but to start at over 100 and get down to that in 1 year, I think is pretty damn good. And I've just been in like the unhaul spirit. If I read a book off my TBR and don't like it, off it goes. And so if I keep that like that spirit and mojo going this year, hopefully I can bring that number down even further. And that leads me into like my first bookish goal, and that is I want 70% of the books I read to come from my own physical TBR. And what I mean by that is I borrow a lot of books from like Overdrive audiobooks and ebooks, and I go to my library and borrow a lot of books from there. And while I enjoy doing that, I do want to make my TBR the focus. The books I currently own the focus. And obviously that's going to include if I buy books this year, I will include that. But I want at least 70% of the books I read to come from books I own, even if I unhaul them after that. I want them to be books I already own. And the next book, or the next goal rather, is I want to, I'm sorry, I'm looking down my notes. I want to not set a Goodreads goal, to do the thing a lot of people did last year where they make their goal one book for the whole year. Obviously to read more than that, but to use Goodreads solely as a book tracking feature, to look at your stats at the end of the year, to track how many books you've read, not to set a goal to succeed to read this certain number of books. And this is the first year I've done this. I set my goal as one book. I have already completed my goal. I finished a book last night. I wanted to do this just so I could use Goodreads to track it, because I realize that I feel guilty if I don't meet my Goodreads goal and I feel like I've failed at something, and that's a very negative and toxic viewpoint to have, because it's just books. If I read one book, I'm a reader. If I read 100 books, I'm a reader. And so I missed my goal by like 5 books, and so I felt kind of bad and guilty and realized I didn't want to feel that way next year. And if you set a Goodreads goal for yourself to use it actually to reach that goal, good for you. The Goodreads goals are not like arbitrary, and if they work for you, they work for you. If they don't, they don't. You can use Goodreads however you want. I'm not here to preach and say, oh, everyone should only set their Goodreads goal as 1 so that they can avoid the toxic mindset. I'm just telling you how it personally affected me. I'm looking forward to seeing what books I read this year, and I would like to ideally hit about the same. I want to read about 55 books this year as I did last year, but I'm not going to be using Goodreads to explicitly track that goal. Another goal I have for 2018 is to write a review for every book I have read. Last year I did a physical, like filmed review of basically almost every book except towards the end of the year, and while I enjoyed that, I found it to be kind of stressful. Especially because not every book, like I didn't have in-depth thoughts of every single book I read. I didn't read everything extremely critically. Sometimes I just read books for fun, and filming a review of those is a little harder. Plus, like any booktuber could tell you, unless it's a super popular book, most of those videos don't get very many views compared to some of my other videos. So to put in all the work to film, to edit, to write all my notes for the book and get my coherent, concise thoughts out to the world, it's a lot of work for very little like reward, if that makes sense. And I know I just said that I don't like to make videos for views, but there's a lot of work that goes into them, and when I get maybe 1/4 of the views that a regular video I put all this time and effort into would get, it's a little disheartening. So I decided that I was going to write reviews on Goodreads for all of my books that I read, and just do a brief synopsis and my thoughts in a monthly wrap-up instead. So you can follow me on Goodreads if you're not already following me, so you can get my thoughts on every book I read. I did most of them last year. I'm a couple reviews behind already, but I did towards the last couple months of the year. I definitely utilized this feature, which is interesting because I never really utilized the Goodreads review feature before. I would like rate the books on Goodreads and maybe give a sentence or two, but this time I'm trying to break them down, and I would like to do this for every book I read this year. That way I do have some place that I can show more in-depth thoughts to if people are curious, because sometimes wrap-ups you can only say a little bit about each book and what you thought about it, and so this gives me an avenue to really express my thoughts without having to sit down and film an entire video and edit it and upload it and that whole process. And the last like bookish goal I have is to do a buddy read. I would love to do a buddy read this year with someone. If you are interested, just shoot me a comment or like tag me on social media, any which way. But yeah, I would like to do a buddy read because a lot of people I follow have done them, and they seem like they are a lot of fun, and I just want to hop on that bandwagon. I have no idea what I want to buddy read, what book I want to buddy read with someone. That wasn't a sentence, but you know what I'm talking about. I don't have a specific book that I'm like, I want to buddy read this book with someone. I am open to suggestions. I just want to experience the buddy read thing. And yeah, so like I said, if you are interested at all, just let me know. And that is something I hope to get done by 2018. I do have some like other goals and like life goals, but those are my bookish ones. I hope as a channel to post consistently. I don't know if I'm going to go back to my upload schedule 3 times a week. I've quit my job in order to focus on graduating this semester and to focus on my Etsy store, and I'm very fortunate enough to be able to have done that. So I will have more opportunities to film, so hopefully I can get at least 2 videos up a week. That's the tentative goal. I'm not going to say that I'm going to film or I'm not going to upload every single Monday, Wednesday throughout the entire year, but like I would hope to be a little consistent with my videos. I also have some goals with like my Etsy store. Like I said, I want to hit a certain number of sales by the end of the year. I am like at 30. I would love to hit at least 100, maybe 150 by the end of the year. That's a lofty goal, but Etsy is one of those things that's the same as YouTube. Once you start getting traction it's kind of a snowball effect. And so I've seen that recently, and so I don't think it's undoable. That is a goal I have for the end of the year. If you're interested in looking at my Etsy store or supporting me in any way, that is always linked down below with a special 10% off coupon for my YouTube family. I sell crochet and cross stitch. My cross stitches especially are nerdy. I have Harry Potter ones. I have A Court of Mist and Fury. I have the To All the Stars quote, and that has been selling like crazy. I also have like book sleeves and things like that, so if you are interested, that is a shameless self-plug, but it's my channel, so I can do it. That'll be linked down below, and thank you guys so much for watching. I know some people love these videos, some people hate them. As always, like I said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!